Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers,
Hello and welcome to episode 445 of the AFTN podcast. I am Joe Deasy, and this week I am joined by Gideon Hill.
Hey Joe, how's it going?
Very good, Gideon. I asked Peter last week, are you ready to be hurt again this season? But we've got a lot more optimism this time around, I suppose.
It's a touchy subject for sure. It's not one you can really answer with certainty. But a new year, new season comes new opportunities and optimism, I guess.
And 100% record for the Whitecaps so far. It doesn't hurt either.
No, certainly getting off on the right foot against a formidable Portland opponent for sure.
Yeah. How are you feeling after game one? What was the overarching emotion for you after watching that game?
I think beating a team like Portland, I know I say like Portland with certainly they're a good team, and I mean they are after defeating team in the CONCACAF Champions League. I think it was 4-5-0 with Marathon, with certainty that they amazing scoreline in that one, and Jimmy Chara was just sensational with the hat trick. So I was very worried coming into Sunday and knowing that we hadn't played a serious game besides preseason 4 or 5 months, 6 months. So yeah, I'm very happy with this result. I'm glad Cava got off to the races with a headed goal. I think those, albeit against weaker opponents in preseason, those goals for Canada really do a lot for confidence, as well as those two against Chicago. So I'm happy for them. I'm happy they got off the set piece and off to the right foot, or on the right foot to start the season here.
Yeah, that goal, so often you look at a goal and you say, there was a bit of luck, or, there was an accident somewhere in the build-up. That goal was meant to be, it panned out the way that they wanted it to pan out. The strength behind that header was just fantastic. And I'm with you. I'm really happy that Cavallini's gotten off to a running start. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people I speak on this for, but I mean, how long have we been, screaming for a goal like that? Like a set piece, perfect ball whipped in by Gutierrez, and then just a perfect header. Like, we've missed that for years. I mean, Watson provided that, but a striker that can score those goals, that's been sorely missed. And I think it does set out the Whitecaps on the right foot from this game and going forward in the MLS season.
Yeah, you are forgetting a goal-scoring force that was Pamu Duka, but we'll move past that one.
Well, he scored a lot of footed goals too, but
he scored 2 in a game once. That was a weird.
Yeah, against Seattle. One of them was like a heel flick. I remember that off a free kick from Teixeira. So crazy how those things happen.
That was one of those games that I finished watching more confused than I started watching.
You left more confused.
Exactly. Pamu Duka can score 2 goals in a Cascadia derby.
Anybody can.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
Freddie Montero can. Oh wait.
Yeah. We know more about the Whitecaps now than we did a week ago, for example, but it feels like there was lots of pleasant surprises in there. What were some things that surprised you about the team?
I think just how fluid they were, not in the first 15 minutes or so, but throughout the game. I think they developed, maybe they didn't hold the ball for a whole lot, but they definitely recovered well. And I think that's MDS's standpoint of getting the ball back and working hard and being exciting. It was a 1-0 scoreline, but I feel like they created a decent amount of chances. And I just think the fluidity in midfield was evident from the get-go. And, not having Alexandre or Owusu in there was definitely disappointing. And I feel like the Whitecaps can never have the full team that they sign in the off season, the first game of the season, which is super frustrating. But I think the team around them will help them and acclimate Gaspar and Alexandre into the team and getting them going right off the hop here. So I think it's scary good that the Whitecaps won this game, or the game against Portland, and as well that they have two or three guns in Adnan as well that can come into this team and be starters and help the team win even more.
Yeah, that's what's so encouraging, is that this was kind of a baseline, and we're just going to add supposedly exciting pieces on top of that. We do have an interview that Michael did with Bruno Gaspar and Caio Alexander coming up at the end of this segment, so we'll hear a little bit about them, about why they've come to Vancouver and why they've come to MLS, and what the fans can expect from them. So while we might not see them necessarily on the field this week, although there apparently is a small chance, we're going to hear from them directly on today's pod. Just before we move on, we spoke about pleasant surprises, but I don't think anyone's under the illusion that this is it. Like, this is the finished article. But what were a couple of things, Gideon, that you thought needed to be worked on or needed to be looked at?
I think conversion. Again, I think we everybody is talked about this before. Like the final ball, which I think we saw in that goal by Cavallini for sure. But I just mean the finished product in front of goal. And I think being a little bit more strong on the ball and not giving it away. I saw that in the first little bit of the game where it was just kind of nervous, and it wasn't necessarily, passes weren't 100% thought through, or they weren't connecting. So a little bit more of that. But I think as a team as a whole, I'm very impressed and very happy with how they performed. And I think there's not one single player that maybe in the past we could have picked out. I think it was more of a team, a huge win, and maybe some little nitpicks I'm sure MDS will work on in training. Yeah,
I generally agree with that. The one thing I was a little bit worried about watching that game was in the 4-4-2, I guess, the midfield two seemed not always to be there to do the defensive covering work. I'm not quite sure if that's a player problem or a system problem, but there certainly was potential in that match to get overloaded in the midfield. Although it didn't happen that much because the game was so dynamic, it seemed to be breaking either way at any given point.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in, you say that, and that's what's scary, is that I know Baldissimo dropped really deep at times, almost as a third center back, which I like because he has that distribution. But playing a team like Portland, who have three very strong midfielders in the trio with Williamson, Diego Chara, and Diego Valeri, those three are three of the best in MLS at those positions. So you can easily get broken down by that three diamond. I'm not sure if we'll see that as much with Toronto as we get into it, but just having those three there and being so open at times can be a little confusing and concerning, as you say, Joe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we go on to preview Toronto and the start of the season they've had, and maybe a little look at how they did last year, let's jump to this interview with Bruno Gaspar and Caio Alexander, who will talk about various things, including why they've come to Vancouver.
Hi there, Bruno. Welcome to Vancouver. It's good to see you here. It's been a long time for you getting here, but can we just start by asking you, when did you first know of the Whitecaps' interest in signing you, and what was it about coming to the Whitecaps and to Major League Soccer that particularly interested you?
It was about 2 months maybe. My agent called me and talked me about the Vancouver. I know I watch it sometimes MLS, also Vancouver. I really enjoyed the team, also the fans, the stadium, the city is very good. So what can I ask more for? Fans, the city, the club, staff. It's a perfect club to play.
From what you've seen of MLS compared to what you've been used to playing over in Europe, how do you think the level compares, and what did you make of the first game that you saw live on Sunday, the win over Portland?
I think every team have the same level. Very good players, and I don't know. I think Europe is more tactical, maybe. Here have more runs. The game is more fast. Yeah.
This is a league where fullbacks that can really push forward seem to do well. The kind of play that you bring to this team, what can fans expect to see from you in terms of how you're going to play this year?
Yeah, I like to attack as every fullbacks, but I see myself like a balanced player. I also defend. I also have a good pass, so yeah, they can expect attack, good passes, good crosses. So,
thanks, Bruno. Really good to see you here.
Thank you.
Hi there, Caio. Welcome to the Whitecaps. What was it about the Whitecaps' interest that made you decide that Major League Soccer was where you're wanting to now play?
Bom dia, obrigado pela recepção. Desde que chegou a proposta do Vancouver para mim, eu fiquei muito feliz. É um grande desafio jogar a MLS. É uma liga que vem crescendo constantemente, é uma liga que vem revelando grandes jogadores. Então, para mim vai ser um desafio muito grande, um desafio que vai agregar muito na minha vida profissional, na minha evolução. Como ser humano também, vou crescer muito, pois estou sozinho aqui na cidade, então o amadurecimento tem que ser rápido, porque você tem que se virar, e acaba sendo uma grande evolução na minha vida. Então, esse projeto me agradou, além do treinador, do Mark, me ajudar muito, conversar comigo, demonstrar interesse na minha contratação. Fiquei muito feliz, que eu vinha de uma Série A de Campeonato Brasileiro com 50 jogos, então, para mim foi um grande prazer receber essa proposta, e na hora fiquei feliz, aceitei, abracei o projeto e quero continuar evoluindo na minha carreira, evoluindo como ser humano e crescendo aqui dentro do clube.
Thank you for the welcome. I'm very excited to be here. Since I first learned of the interest, I was very excited and interested, as it is a growing league with lots of young players who are very excited, lots of energy. I'm here to continue to grow my game, improve myself, evolve as a human being and as a player, as the league does. Mark's involvement throughout the whole process was key. He showed a lot of interest. He talked to me a lot, and it got me very excited. As I said, I want to continue growing and evolving as a person and as a player, and I think this was the right place for me at this time in my career.
Just following on from that, having a coaching staff that speak Portuguese, being able to communicate that way with the coach, was that a big swaying point for you?
Eu já vinha estudando inglês há um tempo, desde que, antes de saber da proposta, uns 5 meses atrás eu já estava estudando inglês, estou aprendendo dia a dia, e o Marco fala português, para mim foi essencial, né? Porque me passou o projeto do clube, me passou o que eu queria escutar, né? A verdade, como era que eu poderia evoluir com o meu futebol aqui na MLS. Então, para mim foi de suma importância. Creio que agora, dentro do vestiário com os jogadores, falando inglês, eu posso pegar a língua um pouco mais rápido e agregar também dentro de campo, porque eu vim dar o meu melhor, vim ajudar meus companheiros, vim somar e, se Deus quiser, conquistar títulos aqui com Vancouver.
I've been learning to speak English for a while before the interest from the Whitecaps, but Mark's ability to speak Portuguese was very important, as he could explain the club's project and how I would fit into his vision and how he could help me develop as a player. on a day-to-day basis, I'm learning from my teammates, from our interactions in training, in the locker room. I'm picking up on various bits of English, and that helps a lot.
How much MLS have you watched, and how do you feel you think it compares to the Brazilian league?
Já estava acompanhando sim a MLS. Como eu disse, é um campeonato que tem crescido muito, tem revelado grandes jogadores e agora passei a acompanhar bem mais. Tem alguns amigos que estão jogando a MLS e para mim tem sido de suma importância estudar, saber como é o jogo, porque no Brasil é um jogo técnico, é um jogo de força, e aqui também tem jogadores com muita técnica, jogadores que têm um nível de força um pouco elevado também, e buscar trabalhar forte para igualar o nível de força, o nível de técnica o mais rápido possível para que eu possa ajudar dentro do campo. Então, o Campeonato Brasileiro é um campeonato de refino técnico, creio que aqui na MLS também está com esse refino técnico. Temos grandes jogadores dentro da nossa equipe que vão nos ajudar com grandes jogos, com grandes gols, assistências, e quero trabalhar para que eu seja um deles, com muita humildade, pé no chão, para que eu possa ajudar o Vancouver.
I had been following the league for a bit. It is a league that is growing a lot here and internationally. I also have a few friends in the league. So I followed it because it's important. Regards to the style of the league and the differences, it's important to learn and study them. So I've been watching a bit of the MLS and the Brasileirão. The Brazilian league is a very technical with some physical aspects to the game. I need to improve on a little bit on the physical side of my game. Can contribute to the team technically and physically. And I'm working every day to get to a higher standard.
Thanks, Caio. Good luck. We got a chance to speak to Bruno and Caio yesterday. It came across as a couple of guys that really want to be here, really looking forward to what lies in store for them. What have you seen from them so far in training, and how far away do you think they are before you might see them involved, maybe not as starters, but in some capacity in matches?
How they looked, I'm not surprised when we make so much work on our recruitment side to bring players and then see their characteristics, because we looked at them a lot. Bruno is incredibly comfortable on the ball, offensive-minded, possession-oriented player, knows the role very well. They struggled with the first 2 days physically. They said the altitude, hydration, they're still in the process of getting used to everything, but today looked better, and today they looked good, both of them. So we have to be careful with the process. When you want to speed up players too fast, then an injury could occur, and instead of being patient one more week, you lose them for months. We don't want to do that. But do we think there's a possibility of them traveling to Orlando this weekend? Yes, but with a lot of communication and with work with our performance team, we'll know exactly when's the right time to have them in. We want to speed up the process, but at the same time, be careful with it.
And that was Bruno Gaspar and Caio Alexander, two players I'm sure we're all very excited to see on the pitch eventually. Maybe this week, but most likely starters at some point in the next few weeks. So Gideon, let's have a quick look at Toronto FC. Obviously, they lost that first game of the season. We'll touch on that in a second. But last season, moderately successful, made the playoffs, but got knocked out in the first round. Overall, I guess, a disappointment for someone who finished, or for a team that finished second overall.
Yeah, and I think I was, going to the end of the season, I was very surprised, a little surprised, I guess I should say, about Greg Vanney parted ways. But the success in postseason is something I'm not really surprised by. They didn't have the necessary scoring depth. They didn't look comfortable from the get-go playing Nashville, who are, again, I say this word a lot, but a fluid team. They're young, they're dynamic, they have great wingers, great build-up as well, a very young team. So that was interesting to see them, drop in that fashion and see Nashville go pretty far. But yeah, I expect a little bit more out of them given how strong they are. They didn't add a whole lot in the offseason. They lost Piatti, which I thought they would have for sure picked up his contract given that he's a DP. So a little surprised by that. But other than that, I think a little disappointed. I think Chris Armas has pretty much picked up where this team left off last year, and then obviously not winning the first game against Montreal. But I think there's lots of things to build on coming into this weekend against the Caps.
Yeah, you couldn't really say they're not playing well at the moment, given that they beat Lyon in the Champions League. Maybe they're guilty of taking their eye off of MLS while they focus on the CONCACAF Champions League, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that in the past with different teams being in that league and MLS, especially early in the year, is that you put all your eggs in one basket, and I mean the eggs fall through the basket, or whatever wording you want to say. But we've seen a lot of those teams try and win the Champions League and put everything they have into it. And then MLS, it really hurts you later in the year where you're dropping 4 or 5 games to start the year, all those points, and you can't make it up at the end of the year with injuries or what have you in the summer. So it is interesting to see them win against Lyon, and hopefully they can do that again at some point and win the second leg. But yeah, definitely not the start they wanted to be in the last season.
Yeah, they're up against Cruz Azul in the next round, so another very intriguing matchup there. That loss to Montreal, it was the highest scoring game last weekend. It was 4-2 to Montreal in the end. Both teams with new head coaches. Toronto played a 4-2-3-1 with many names that I have to admit I had to go Google to see where they came from. Yeah, they've got a long injury list. Altidore, Pozuelo, I think Akinola is also injured as well. I think only their back line is somewhat intact, and it's a pretty good back line. It has, Auro, Gonzalez, Laria, and Alex Bono in goal. So, the back line's good, but I'm looking at the rest of the team, and you've got Marky Delgado, Michael Bradley, a couple of very good MLS operators there, but last week they were all just 6s and 7s and fell 4-2 to that Montreal team.
Yeah, and all honesty, it should have been 4-1. I think the late goal by Richie Laryea was a beautiful goal, take nothing away from the Canadian international. Nice little right-footed ding over the top of Bono, but disappointing game. I know Mullins is probably one of the more experienced MLS players besides Michael Bradley, Marky Delgado, and Gonzalez. Laryea has brought a lot, but I think a team lacking that much power with Altidore, Pozuelo, as you mentioned, among others, is certainly Sorio as well, it appears. So, missing a lot of bodies. I think their young guys have prepared well for the off season, and Greg Vanney gave him some minutes last year, which certainly helped. But a young team, I think, kind of rebuilding. I don't really know how to look at their team and think they're contenders again, but they are a dangerous team on the wings nonetheless.
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's very tempting to draw conclusions from one result, and a loss to Montreal isn't a death sentence in MLS. Maybe it's a new manager bounce from Montreal, right? Who had their own coaching change in the past year. One thing that Mark Dos Santos said today really it made me excited to watch this game. He was speaking about Chris Armas, and I forget who it was who asked the question, but someone asked him, "What can you say about Toronto?" And Mark Dos Santos said something really, really interesting, and it kind of showed me a little bit of how he thinks, I guess. But he said lots of New York Red Bulls identity in that team, and maybe I'm still processing what that actually means, but New York Red Bulls for a long time played a brand of football that was probably among the most exciting in the league. So that bodes well for Toronto, Gideon. What do you think?
Yeah, and I'm really, interested in that answer as you are, Joe. It seems like you're still processing that. And you talk about the Red Bulls in that era, which I think you're alluding to the Henry era. And I mean, it helps when you have
Mm-hmm.
one of the best strikers of all time. But even after that, like when they had Bradley Wright Phillips and Lloyd Sam, like that team that Chris Armas inherited just a few years ago did become very exciting. They transitioned into a much younger team after Jesse Marsh left. They had Tyler Adams at one point, who's now with RB Leipzig. So it's a team that's very, very dangerous, and I think you can't take them for granted, like you mentioned. Yeah, the 4-2 loss to Montreal doesn't look that good, but again, they came off a big win and a lot of taxing players playing 2 games in a week early on in the season. So it should be interesting to see how they come out and play.
Well, we've heard what we think, Gideon, but we aren't really TFC fans, I think we can say on this podcast. So we do have an interview to slice it, or to splice in right here, I should say. But Michael has spoken to Kristin Knowles of the Vocal Minority podcast. It's a TFC and Canadian football podcast. So let's get some insight from some people who actually watch TFC week in, week out.
So I'm delighted now to be joined by Kristin Knowles from the Vocal Minority podcast, just to talk all things TFC. I'm sure we'll delve into a lot of other stuff as well. Welcome to the show, finally, Kristin. We've wanted to have you on for a while, just never got round to it, but welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. It's really a pleasure to be here. I love what you guys do, and I'm always happy to talk to a fellow podcaster and supporter of Canadian soccer. So.
Well, like, without being a mutual love fest, I like what you guys do out there as well. I don't have a lot of time to listen to tons of podcasts, but yours is one of the ones I've listened to. I've started to listen to the Ballers Round in Montreal as well, just from knowing Eve and Paul, and we kind of want to just support all the podcasts.
Each other, yeah.
Because we're all wanting the same thing.
Yes, exactly. We all want the same thing, our voices to be heard and have something different to listen to, but we appreciate anybody that puts in the time required to listen to our very long show. So
yeah, well, see, that's what I love about your show though as well, because it's long, like ours. We've just got to the stage of like, fuck it. It's like, doesn't matter how
what
long
else is there to do?
People can listen in stages. And I don't know, but we've gone off tangent right away, but I don't know about you guys, but we've been like putting out 3-hour shows, and I thought no one's going to listen to a 3-hour show, but they've had better listening figures than some of our shorter ones.
It's funny, we get some good feedback too, or when we do a shorter show now, people are like, was something missing? Or is one of you sick? What happened? What's going on? I had this all planned out. What's happening? But I think because I think people appreciate the conversations, and because we're less analytical than we used to be on our show. In our early days, we did a lot of analysis because we all came from blog writing, match previews, match breakdowns, all that sort of thing. And then the more we got into it, the further we got away from hard and fast analysis. And we just love the random conversations, which is how ours started to begin with. It grew out of Twitter conversations that were mirroring conversations we were having in the stands. And people kept saying, man, you guys should have a podcast. You're so funny. You guys are so smart. Y'all know what you're talking about. And we're like, maybe we should have a podcast. And
how
7 years later.
Oh, there we go. It's just 7 years. I was going to say, how long? 7 years. It's been a while.
Oh, yeah. I am astonished that it has actually been that long, but we've been doing this for 7 years.
Wow. Yeah, we started March 2013.
Yep.
So, yeah, just pretty close with you guys. Fantastic. Well, let's get talking TFC, because from a Whitecaps perspective, we had a Cascadian derby in Utah last week. Now we've got a Canadian derby coming up in Florida. It's a very bizarre year, and it's going to be very un-Canadian-like weather and stuff. So we'll dig into that, dig into how TFC's done in the Champions League. But I kind of want to go a little bit back to the off-season, and I guess the main big talking point from the off-season is you lost Greg Vanney, you've got Chris Armas. When Greg Vanney was first appointed, I wasn't sure about that, but over the last few years, I've really come to appreciate what he brought to TFC as a coach. I think he's a great coach. I think going down to the Galaxy is going to turn them around. But how big a blow is it for TFC to lose him? Or has he set enough kind of foundations there that it didn't really matter who came in, it's just going to carry on?
It's a really good question, and it's an interesting thing to consider in that, yes, a lot of fans were upset when he left because he had done some very good things, and it did take time. There's still to this day, and often myself included, never fully trusted his vision, but obviously the results were there, so it's hard to quibble with success, right? You know, we went to 3 cups, we won 1, we won everything the 1 year, right? So that is all very much, you know, you just point at your record and go, well, argue with that. But I think that him leaving, it was a surprise only because the talk earlier in the year was that, oh yeah, of course he's staying, a contract's there, just needs to be signed. And then as the year wore on, there was less talk about it. And obviously, you know, he wanted to do something different. And there's, you know, a little bit of rumblings that he and Curtis, and Curtis and Manning weren't on the same page any longer in terms of how they wanted to progress with the club. And, you know, he played for the Galaxy for a long time. There's a real sense of community and family there for him. So it's a good next step. So I think when he left, yes, people were upset, but I didn't feel bereft that he was leaving. I was concerned about what direction the Toronto FC front office would take in terms of hiring a new manager. But I think one of the things that people really need to recognize is that Bill Manning is still around. And, you know, sports executives, you know, you can rate them in many different ways. And Bill Manning, for whatever faults you may assign to him, he is incredibly knowledgeable. He is very passionate, and he is very involved in the sport of soccer within North America, and has been his entire life. Even when he, you know, yes, he moved away from it, he managed with some other sports, but he's been involved in MLS for a very long time and at a very high level. And he has very specific visions for how to build a club and how to maintain a club. You saw it with RSL, and his arrival, along with Greg Vanney being put in charge, made a world of difference in Toronto. And you can look at Tim Bezbachenko as well. Look what he's done with the Crew ever since he left, although, you know, he saddled us with a couple tough contracts, but that's okay. You know, Curtis has still yet to prove himself, but having a very specific vision from the top down in terms of how the money is going to be spent, in terms of football knowledge, gives us a sort of, or at least myself, a sense of not peace, but very comfortable or confident that they're not going to completely mess it up like the old days. Because if this was, you know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we would all be, the sky is falling, because the ownership and the people in charge back then were useless and, you know, did everything wrong over and over and over again. So this is different. So now we have Chris Armas, who is, you know, honestly, he's unproven. You know, one sort of successful-ish partial year with the energy drinks, and taking over from, you know, a previously successful coach under, you know, perhaps trying circumstances, but didn't really do anything. When you look back at his record, it's fine, but he's not somebody I'd be like, oh yeah, we got Chris Armas. Did you hear who we got? Like, oh my God. No one's doing that. But he has a connection with Ali Curtis. Yeah. For good or for ill, right? I was
going to ask you about that.
and when it happened, we were all, you know, at least on our podcast, we were all like, oh, yeah. So the Red Bulls, okay. And his coaching staff too. Oh, that's, yeah, good. So you all know each other. Oh, that's great. Good. You know, familiarity it's, you know, it happens in sport, right? It's a different type of nepotism. You know, we've spent several years joking about Eric Zavaletta's being Greg Vanney's nephew, because he is.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. No, Greg Vanney is Eric Zavaletta's uncle.
Oh wow.
We call him the nifty nephew. Although now we don't know what to call him because his uncle doesn't coach here anymore. So, oh yeah. So that's long been the sort of a bit of a joke about why Eric Zavaleta is still around, which is a little bit unfair to Zavaleta. He is actually a decent player. He's not a great player. He's never going to be a great player, but
he's one of those
play
MLS guys that you can, like Russell Tybert here. He's never going to be an outstanding player, but you can rely on him to come in and do a job.
Most of the time.
Zavs
has had his up and downs, but so has Tybert, right? So,
Yeah.
formerly known as Canadian Soccer Jesus, and no longer. But
You're never going to live up to that tag, though.
No,
as soon as you get that, that's it.
I know, you're done. That was the end of his career right there. So yeah, there's concerns about Armis's qualifications, whether he's just hired because Curtis is comfortable with him. You know, to hear players speak of him so far has been encouraging. To hear people who cover the team that don't work for the team have positive things to say about Armis and what his knowledge is, at least during interviews. That seems to be positive. It's so early to tell, though. So it was a very weird off season to have silence. Chris Armis, more silence. Like it's been a very strange off season, and one that we thought was going to be far more volatile.
Yes.
We expected more of a remodel on the squad than what we got.
Yeah, because 2 players moved on and you signed a homegrown. Because when we were doing our season preview and I was looking at it all, because I hadn't followed that closely, I was like, that can't be right. It mustn't have been updated. And it's like, oh, wow. That's very unusual in MLS. Now, I know it's a successful team. Got to MLS Cups. Lots of good players there. But surely if you haven't won it, you have to freshen things up. Or is that coming in the summer?
It's a good question. I don't think so. Not to the degree that we expected. They are very, and they have been for a couple of years, they're very vested in part of this core of this team. Obviously, Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore, Mark Delgado, as apparently he wishes to be called now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's changed it to Mark. It's so hard to call him that. He's been Marky for so long.
He's grown up now then.
Yeah, exactly. He's a man now. Who else? Justin Morrow, who, again, as far as I'm concerned, can play for as long as he wants. I love him. Chris Mavinga, obviously you need him. He's not going anywhere. Omar Gonzalez, who, is on his way out as far as I'm concerned. And I love Omar Gonzalez, but he is not the player that he was in 2019. Anyways, there's a few others who have been sort of like, aging core is a good way to put it, because they're all getting older. There's things that they can't do as well, but they're very vested in these players. They believe in their, commitment to the team and commitment to being a successful team. Michael Bradley is always going to lead that conversation. And even with all of that, we were still surprised that they didn't go out and buy a shiny toy. Mm. And because that is often the TFC way, whether it's been handled well or not. And obviously in recent years, it's been handled quite well. You look at Sebastian Javinko and Victor Vasquez and Benoit Cheroux to a certain extent, magic on the pitch, Pozuelo, obviously. And then, to lesser degrees, obviously Piatti didn't work out. Looking further back, Gilberto and Defoe, but there's potential in, that sort of thing if they have looked in the right places. But instead, we have them doing something, at least right now, whether it's by design or for monetary reasons. And, you have to sort of take what they say with a grain of salt, right? But you hope at least a certain section of TFC fandom hopes that this youth movement is by design. And that's where the the belief in Armis and Curtis comes in, because it's something that they have previously done, spoken to, said is their goal and their way of building a team is through their academies and through their younger players.
Yeah, because Red Bulls have always been strong. In the USSDA, they've been strong. In
Yep.
USL, they were one of the few second teams that actually played like a proper team. That's interesting. I mean, you mentioned Chris Armis and folk speaking highly of him. I've been on 3 calls with him since he's been appointed, the 2 after the CCL games and his introductory one. I've had brief interactions. He comes across as a super nice guy. I like coaches that expand on their answers. I love speaking to Jim Curtin for that reason. He'll just talk away if you ask him a question. And Chris Armis is good for that. But obviously, talking and doing it on the pitch are 2 different things. Do you think the start that TFC's had, that win over Leon, which was magnificent, it's like I grudgingly offer my praise as a Whitecap supporter
I understand,
to
yes.
TFC. I mean, you've got to be honest, with the COVID outbreak, the lack of games, the lack of prep, the missing players, to even get a draw in Mexico, and I know it was an own goal, but to put in that performance, but then to look so comfortable in the second leg and to get through, that was outstanding. But has that now heaped the pressure on Chris Armis? Because now the support's going to be like, okay, it's the same as normal, we're title contenders, this is it.
Well, and that is the line to walk, and that is a really good question, because again, there's this part of the TFC fandom that has been calling for, like I said, these youth players, these young academy kids, to see time, to not just sit on the bench, to not waste away within Toronto FC's academy system and go elsewhere to flourish, or in some cases to lose their careers altogether. But we've been staring at these kids, screaming for them to be played for so long. And to have him do that yes, by necessity, because he had a starting 11's worth of players injured or sick, but to have them do that and go out and win, I can't get over it. I watched it. I'm still flabbergasted. I put that up. That win is up there in TFC's top 5 wins as far as I'm concerned, because it's that astonishing that they did that, and that these young players not only contributed but did not look at a place on the pitch. So yeah, there's already pressure on this, and then TFC fans are used to a certain level of success now, even though we spent all those years being so shit and getting almost comfortable with how bad we were. It's a badge of honor to have been like, oh well, we've seen some things. You weren't there when we spent 8 years defending ourselves for being horrible. You just get comfortable with the badness. So there's it's still sometimes weird to feel like a successful club. 2018 was almost a relief. It was like, oh, okay, here's the old badness again. All right, we understand this. We're good with this. But yeah, Armis is going to have to maintain, if not necessarily a cup win, they're going to have to get to the playoffs this year, I think, for a certain segment of Toronto fandom to consider him a success. Now, for me personally, if he spends an entire season developing the youth players and, actually, letting them play and letting them contribute and having it look like at least, decent football, and they just eke into the playoffs, or even if they just barely miss the playoffs, personally, I will be okay with that, because this is something that I have wanted to see for this club, because they talk about, like I've talked to coaches within the TFC's youth system, and they talk about these players that are coming up, and we see them, and we don't get to watch reserve games anymore like we used to, right? We used to go to reserve games all the time at BMO Field. So you don't get to see it as much unless you really work to. And to have that possibility to actually develop these players and have them grow into first team players who are consistently first team players is something that's honestly really exciting. and sets the club up for success for years to come. Instead of looking at as their plan is, this is our 1 year plan, because that's what it's felt like. Every year, yes, they were for the most part successful, but every year with Greg Vanney has felt like a 1 year plan. This is our 1 year plan, which is to win MLS Cup. This is again our 1 year plan, instead of looking 2-3 years down the road. And I feel like that's been missing. And I feel like this might be, again, without much evidence for Armas, I feel like this might be their plan.
The thing is, though, once, folk forget the bad years very quickly. Once you've had that success, once you've tasted continued success, when it's then not there, you hit a slight bump. The hardcore probably understand it. The general fan base don't. It's not really the same analogy, but I guess in Scotland this year, Celtic have won everything for years. They've had one bad season. Their fans are almost rioting at the ground. It's like you had one bad year in a 2-horse race. Obviously, MLS is very different. But if the powers that be don't come out and say, look, this is kind of a rebuilding year, this is our philosophy, this is what we're looking to do you think the general public are going to understand that? Or are the knives going to be out for Armas right away?
I think that it will lean more towards that. And I don't think that the club has said or will say that this is a rebuilding year. They will point to that veteran core that is still within the club, that plays when well, Josie, at a highly competitive level and are game changers. So they will point to that. They will say, the youth, the young players are a complement to what they are doing. But also the fact that they still, rumors notwithstanding of a certain Venezuelan, if they don't produce a shiny new toy, there are always going to be questions. Although, like TFC, again, we're very used to them having 3 high-priced DPs, and right now, this is the first time in 6 years that they haven't filled all 3 DP spots before the season has started, I think. So yeah, fans are certainly used to that, and definitely general public who aren't part of the really rabid core. And I think that even if they came out and said, you know what, this is what we're doing, that part of the fan base might not be as accepting. Whether it's Armas out, it won't happen unless this team is 2012, 2011 levels of bad, worst team in the world. Unless that happens, Chris Armas is here for at least 2 years. And the reason I say that is because for so long, and pre-Vanney, and that was the other thing, that they gave him time a lot longer than I thought they were going to, and longer than in some cases I wanted them to, consistency. And this team didn't have that for a really long time. The revolving door of coaches, the revolving door of players, where, we used to do a countdown. We had like 43 players one year, 43 different players in one calendar year for a football club is ridiculous. All took time to the pitch. So that is why he will get time to develop this, regardless of what what they say their official plan is.
Now, it's a small sample size, obviously, so far. There's the 2 games against Leon, excellent. Last Saturday, not so excellent. And I just pulled the team up again because I couldn't remember all the guys that were in it. It's like you go into the MLS lineups thing on MLSsoccer.com. It's like there's going to be folk that just look at that and be like, I don't know who those folk are. Like Singh doesn't even have a picture. It's just a blank face on it. I know. I laughed when I
saw that. I know, because he's so.
But I mean, that performance. I've been on a lot of Montreal calls over the last year, primarily because of Thierry Henry, because the chance to ask Thierry Henry questions, you don't get that every day.
No.
Or anymore. But it's like I took interest in it because Joel Waterman was there, BC boy, and I've kind of been interested in their off-season rebuild, but from what I'd seen and just listening to them chatting and everything like that, I didn't expect Saturday's result. I'm pretty sure you guys didn't expect it either, but they came out so strong on the front foot, playing the kind of game that the Whitecaps like to play. And then you've got a TFC team that like to press, but they're coming off being tired from a monumental effort against Leon. Was that just a blip because of the tiredness, the missing players, or is this what you might expect this weekend as well? Or are they going to be rested and you're going to see a whole different TFC?
I think you're going to see a different TFC this weekend. Sorry. I would
Not
like
what
to
I wanted
point
to
out.
hear.
I would like to point out that every single MLS club that played in the CCL either lost
Yes.
or drew their opening match. Every single one. Not a single one put in a stellar performance. Again, a couple of them drew, and at least one I think might have been a 0-0 draw. But they all looked.
Philly Columbus was 0-0.
Philly
so
Columbus.
they were
Philly
both
Columbus.
in it.
Exactly. So that was probably the most enjoyable. Oh, Philly. Jim Curtin, damn you. It's hard, they're impossible not to like though. Anyway,
Yeah.
but it was very telling to see every single MLS side from the CCL stumble a bit in the opening match. Now, none stumbled so hard as did TFC. And I think there's a combination of, yes, the tiredness, the CCL hangover, as I like to call it, and young players who, especially them, again, it's not to heap criticism on them at all, but they're really, they're having to adjust and learn very quickly. But Montreal, like, power to Wilfred Nancy, who, by the way, I am delighted was handed the reins.
Yeah, I was surprised by
shocked.
that. Even more surprised than Chris Armas getting your guy's job. It's like
100%. When I saw that he threw his hat in the ring, we talked about it on our show a couple times. I said, give this man the job. You're not going to, but you should. And then they did, and I just about fell off my chair. But power to him, considering the player turnover they had in the offseason, the players they lost, and they brought in some quality players as well. But like that's a big turnover of starting core bench strength players that they had to contend with. A new coach, now again, a coach that knows all of them. So that does make a huge difference. He has been within the impact. Sorry, anyway.
I can't not
the
call them
snowflakes,
that.
as I like to call them. It looks like a snowflake. So he's been within that program, that organization for a long time, and obviously has contributed to the development, again, of young players and of core players. So that does make a world of difference for them. But to see how organized he had them, like that was a team with a plan. That was a team that adjusted on the fly to almost, the TFC threw much at them, but even when they were in the game in the second half, to when they'd woken up a bit and done a little bit different, a couple subs, had shifted some things around, gave them a bit of a different focus, they adjusted to that, and they adjusted quickly. And I was impressed at the maturity in how they marked Toronto's attackers out of the match, and how they handled the midfield. And worked around the press, which was hardly a press. It was not very, again, the team was too tired to play that match. You could see it. Like Omar Gonzalez had no business being anywhere near the opposition net on Saturday. And again, and I love Omar Gonzalez, but he is not fleet of foot. And for his many talents, needed to be back there with Luke Singh, protecting Alex Bono. And, let Richie Larea, let Auro, who, hats off to Auro. He doesn't get enough praise from TFC fans as far as I'm concerned.
I loved his penalty.
It was, oh my God. Oh dear Lord. But as a player, for the most part, he is. I don't think people realize, one, how long he's been with the team now, but how consistent he's been on that side of the pitch for TFC, and what a difference it is much of the time when he doesn't play. When he was sick last year, when he was injured last year, that was a huge loss. Anyway, I'm digressing, but I think you will see on Saturday, you're going to have a rested team. You're going to have a team that isn't necessarily looking for revenge, but looking to assert themselves as the team that just beat Leon, and to also pump themselves up heading into a match against a very good team right now in Cruz Azul.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying. I thought playing Leon was bad enough, and now it doesn't feel so scary when I look at Cruz Azul, who 10 years ago TFC handled quite well, but that was 10 years ago. So
yeah, couldn't have got a tougher draw, 2 Mexican teams in the first 2 games, could you?
Yeah, that's just the way we don't do anything easily. No.
Sadly, it wasn't forged. We were hoping it was going to be forged, but that's
we
won't get into that. But I just pulled the stats up from last week. So both Montreal and TFC had 12 shots. Montreal had 5 shots on goal, 4 of which ended up in the back of the net, and 3 Toronto shots on goal, which, considering the usual offensive output for TFC, is obviously very surprising. Last couple of things. Now, Vancouver have fast-paced guys. Christian Dahomey is really good just now. Diber Caicedo is very fast as well. Looking at what Kyoto and Toy did to that defence, do you see changes in the TFC defence? Is there just not anybody that can really come in?
I only see changes if there are players healthy, because there isn't anyone. All of the players are injured or sick. So
yeah, I looked at your bench for last week just now as well, because I couldn't remember who was on it, and it's like,
oh yeah, who are these people? And
although our bench was all homegrowns.
Yeah, none of them are central defenders. And that's the thing. So Eric Zavaleta is injured, or was injured. Chris Mavinga is injured. We're waiting for updates, right? I'm not even sure who's healthy right now.
It's been very cagey this week. There's not been much given away, which usually makes me think that they're out.
That is one thing about Chris Armas, is he keeps player status very close to his chest. Greg Vanney was a lot more open about things like that, I find. But this year, whether it's Armas or it's by design from the whole management side, they're a lot quieter about these things. But Julian Dunn is out for several weeks, another young player who, loaned to the CPL to Winnipeg. Very good. And, we'd sort of wanted to see him. Obviously, Chris Mavinga, who is the rock back there, and, you're able to put almost anybody next to Chris Mavinga, because he's so talented and can roam and make recovery runs and get back and that sort of thing. And whatever issues we had with Laurent Simon, glorious slide tackles notwithstanding, the man loves a slide tackle. To have, at least when he had a good game, his, again, veteran presence, veteran knowledge. So you're missing a huge presence with 3 center backs that are all hurt. And I don't know if you can slot Justin Morrow into the center, but Justin Morrow was injured as well, right? But he's at least gotten a little bit of time now, so that's good. So he's back. And you're missing these players that you need to have now, whether, I'm expecting Quentin Westberg to start this weekend. No disrespect meant to Alex Bono, although I do think Westberg is the better keeper.
Yeah.
By far. And I think he should start this weekend. And he will also probably play on Tuesday. So that'll be interesting to see if Armas wants to juggle with that little rest. But
that was the other thing for the team selection. It's like, with this game coming up, does that shape what they do for this, or do they feel
it does?
Yeah. Because, Vancouver's coming in still missing tons of guys.
Yep.
MDS spoke yesterday about he's planning on using the 5 subs. He used 2 late subs last week because he didn't really want to bring them on into that environment, because it's all the young guys. But
Yeah,
with the
for
heat and
sure.
humidity, he feels he needs to rely on all 5 subs. We might have Bruno, Gaspar and Caio Alexander coming off the bench. I doubt it. Mark put that out there, but I
Could be interesting.
yeah. But we've got a lot of injuries as well. What do
Yeah.
you think the key is for TFC winning this one?
The key for TFC winning, God, that's such a good question. It's whether or not they're rested enough to execute the press. And if not, whether Armis is willing to adjust his plan and move Michael Bradley back down the pitch as opposed to this more advanced role that he's playing, and whether or not Patrick Mullins, who is being asked to do a lot right now, given
when you see him leading the line, you know you've got some issues there.
Exactly. And, credit to him, he has actually been fairly effective. But again, he is a good MLS player. He is not somebody that should be leading your line. He shouldn't be starting. And I say that as somebody who was dismayed when Patrick Mullins was signed to an nth degree. But he has proven me wrong on more than one occasion. I have come to appreciate his substitute abilities and again, in his veteran presence and his knowledge. But Patrick Mullins should never be leading your line. And he is right now. So it will depend on his ability to focus that attack, and whether or not anybody else from the midfield is available to provide some creativity, because they're really missing creativity right now.
That was
Jacob
very evident last week.
Yeah, Shuffleboard, as I like to call him, is a nice young man. And he's a talented young man. But he is not that person yet at all.
And the danger is if he has some bad runouts, because he had that miss last week and then got burned for pace a couple of times as well. That can do more damage to him than anything
for his
else.
Confidence. And it's happened before, because he had, not last year before, he had all those games out and then started to make mistakes. And then you didn't hear from him for quite some time, whether it was too soon, whether his confidence was dented. And then you also have Michael Bradley taking free kicks.
Yeah, he had a bad game last week.
And again, I have come to appreciate Michael Bradley as the years have gone on. I appreciate his work ethic. I appreciate what he does as a player most of the time. And again, you look at who was on the pitch. Well, who else was going to take a free kick? Maybe Auro takes them. Do you know what I mean? Let's put the 5-foot, 4 person on free kicks and not have him be the person receiving them. I don't know. He can send in a ball. But why doesn't Richie Larea take a free kick? Something like that, something different. Michael Bradley, for all of his skills, free kicks are not one of them. It was like when we had Torsten Frings. Torsten Frings should never be allowed to take free kicks, except for every once. And again, Michael Bradley does the same thing. Every now and again, he produces a thing of beauty, but that is the exception, not the norm. And again, we lack creativity. So to get Jonathan Osorio back, to get Pozuelo back, or to get one of the other attacking players slightly healthier, and I'm not talking about Josie Altidore, to have one of them be available to be just a little bit more creative, to draw the defense. If they don't have that, it's either going to be an ugly game or it's going to be a grinder of a game.
I'm expecting the grinder, because I think the heat will really impact us, because the guys played the whole 90 minutes. I know, 3 o'clock in the Florida heat. I've only been to Florida once, which was for a pre-season tournament that the Whitecaps had in 2012, and that was in February, and it was unbearable then in the afternoon. So I can't imagine what April's like, never mind the summer. I mean, what are you expecting then from the game? I'll gladly take a draw at this point, keep us unbeaten start to the season.
I would happily take a draw. I will take a quiet, composed, non-flashy draw, just to see, a little back to basics play, nothing that completely exhausts most of the team looking ahead to Tuesday. And that's always the line they walk, right? Like CCL glory is the last box to be checked off for Toronto FC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some fans, myself included, it is something that we've long wanted. It's not for everybody. Some people are like, no, should just focus on MLS. And I'm like,
yeah, I love the CCL.
The CCL is, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And I hate that we don't get to watch them in it right now.
Oh.
It's torturous. It's torturous not getting to see them play right in front of you, but it's okay. It's okay. So like I will sacrifice a lot to see them be successful. So I will take, like I said, a quiet, workman-like, boring draw, if that sets them up for success on Tuesday, because that's going to be hard enough. At least it's a late night match, so the sun will be down. That's something. Because that's not going to be easy, and not that playing Vancouver will be easy. They showed very nicely against their rivals on the weekend. I watched that match.
But we've got a lot of confidence going at the moment, and the attack is like on fire.
Very confident. Clicking. Oh well, you Lucas Cavallini Havers, I hate you.
Well, the thing is,
he's so saucy.
The misses he had in that game against Bermuda, we were like, let's hope he gets all that rust out. So he's got all that rust out by the looks of it.
He's got all of that rust out. He looked so focused on the weekend.
He's very confident right now as well. And I think a confident Cava is a very dangerous Cava.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be a draw, but if the Whitecaps take the lead, I think they'll see it out. And usually I don't feel that way about the Whitecaps, but I think it's going to cause TFC to raise the tempo. They might not want to because this game's coming up. And if you guys push forward too much, the homie with the form he's in just now,
he'll burn us for sure. Yeah. Again, if they don't have Chris Mavinga back to complement what's happening at the back, then that almost worries me more than not having someone creative in the midfield.
Well, let's see how it plays out. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I wish we played you more than once a year. We'd get you on again, but maybe in the MLS Cup.
Normally, I think we would. Yeah, maybe the MLS Cup. There we go. Well, when's the Voyageurs Cup again? Which one?
Oh yeah, what is going to happen with that this year? It's like that's
no idea.
The big mystery. I'm assuming it's going to be the best placed MLS team against whatever the CPL can manage to do, because it's not looking good. Actually, let's just finish on this.
Sure.
So I saw the CFL teams in Ontario can't practice just now. So does that mean the CPL teams, they're not practicing either? I know Ottawa went to Spain for a bit, but are they basically just kicking their heels while the other teams are training?
That is exactly what's happening, because it's a province by province thing in terms of COVID practices. Now, Toronto FC got dispensation to practice while they were still here before they went to Florida. So the big question, I hesitate to use the word controversy, is what the CanPL offices have done in terms of negotiating with the provincial government about their status as a sports league, as a sports team, whether they're considered elite enough. Exactly, it's so stupid, to be able to practice. And who knows what's going on behind the scenes, whether they're still pushing it, whether they're just sort of throwing their hands up. I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody about it for a little while, so I don't have any sort of up-to-date knowledge, but it is a frustration. Certainly, and it's a frustration on many levels, not just for sporting teams, but for just people in general. But for that sort of thing, to have it be so uneven across the country, so it's so hard as
Pacific
a league.
Played the Whitecaps in a friendly.
I know, and then and you've got, I don't know what are Cavalry allowed to practice right now?
I think
don't
they
even
are.
Know if they are. Is Alberta?
Actually, I don't know because I haven't seen pictures right enough.
Yeah. So it really is. It's a province by province thing. So
the May long weekend's not happening for the start.
Oh, it's not happening. There's no way. There's no way. I think if we're lucky, and I think it's potentially something for them to aim for. It's also it's a happy thing and sort of turns on what the league is for. If they aim for Canada Day. and that gives you a marketing hook. There you go, CanPL listeners, people. I'm helping. It gives you something to hang it all on. You know, the Canadian League is back. Happy Canada Day weekend. Do something around that, because at the rate, even as slowly as they're happening in my province and in other provinces, at the rate the vaccinations are going, you will see, you know, good chunks of the population that have both their doses of the vaccine by that period in time when you can start looking at fans in the stands even. And that is the big thing for the CPL, right? You know, they missed a year. It's a new league. They need the money. They need gate money, you know, like that's what's going to help keep this going. So they're going to hold off as long as they can. So maybe Canada Day, but maybe Civic Long Weekend. Maybe we're looking at August.
I'm thinking August. I'm thinking the end of August.
You know, and do a 3-month season, you know, and that's what this year looks like. It's tough, right? We're all in this weird limbo, and it is a difficult place to exist as a normal person looking out onto the world, wanting a distraction, wanting entertainment, missing the things that you miss, missing your sport, missing your sporting family. You know, my podcast boys, I haven't laid eyes on them physically in a year, over a year for most of them. I've seen one of them once at a physically distanced drop off in the summer, where it was like, here, I will place this here and back away, you pick it up. Like that was it.
That's what we did with our Christmas presents, which didn't get delivered until March, but that was basically what we did with that. They came, they dropped it off. I briefly saw them for a few seconds from a distance, and that was it.
So we're desperate for, you know, and we look enviously at other leagues, at other places who, some have fans, some don't, some have their leagues going, some don't. And that's the other thing, right? Like
some just cram them all into the supporters end, like Miami and LA.
Oh, scary. I literally felt like almost ill just looking at that.
Me too.
Please don't. And I understand. And, you know, the public health is the most important thing. It absolutely is. We you know, we need to come through this safe. But there are things that I think teams should be allowed to practice. You're outside, you're physically distanced. If they're existing in some kind of bubble, they're being tested all the time. We've seen players play in masks. You can practice in a mask. You know, people who are, you know, high level elite health can certainly wear a mask if doctors can wear masks all day. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's doable. So I understand the frustration from the sporting side when they can't. I also understand from a fan side where, you know, we're desperate for that connection with our club and to get to enjoy them again. But we also just want everyone to come out of this on the other side safe and well. So it's this weird world that we're existing in right now.
Certainly is. At least I was going to say all. At least most of the MLS players have been vaccinated. I'm sure Nick DeLeon didn't take part in that, but we won't get into that.
We won't, that's a whole other show.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Kristin.
Oh, thank you for
As I said at the start, 15-20 minutes. Obviously, we've done double that. But
an hour? I don't know how long we've been talking.
Well, we were talking for about half an hour before we started recording.
True,
so
that's true.
I think we've done about 45 minutes. So.
Excellent.
So before you go, though, let everyone know where they can find you online. Give a good plug to your pod as well.
All right. You can find myself on Twitter at KZ Knowles. You can find the Vocal Minority podcast on Twitter at Vocal Minority CA, or our website is vocalminority.ca. And we are not just TFC, so you can listen to us for other reasons. We started as a TFC podcast, but we have since pivoted. Let's use a popular phrase.
Oh yeah, that's the N word.
Oh, really? It is the word. We have pivoted to being more Canadian soccer focused. Obviously, we still talk about Toronto FC. That is our local side, but we talk about the CanPL, the Canadian national teams, and world footy as it amuses us. And if you haven't listened to us, we're idiots, but we lean into our idiocy. We're four friends who love the game and love being goofs and pop culture tangents. So you should listen to us after you listen to Mike's wonderful show.
You definitely should. I don't listen as much as I'd like to. I need to try and make more time for listening
You
podcasts.
need
I
time.
know the last week's just been absolutely crazy with all the calls and stuff, and because
No doubt.
I've just like jumping on all the calls just because you can't get to training, you can't get
Yeah.
to games, can't even go and watch any local amateur soccer because it's all out. So I've just been pouncing on stuff. But pleasure chatting to you. We'll get you on hopefully soon, and hopefully you can get back in the stands watching TFC in person soon. So thanks so much to Kristin for joining us there. Some great insight. We'll get back to Joe and Gideon looking ahead to Saturday's match between the Canadian rivals shortly. But before that, let's bring you this week's Beauty and the Beast. Joe still hasn't clarified which one is which.
Someone fetch a priest. You can't say no to the Beauty and the Beast, darling.
Welcome to this week's Beauty and the Beast. I'm joined once again by Caroline.
Hello.
Caroline, I know you really enjoyed this section last week, and your sisters have actually helped try to rename the section due to your protests last week.
Got a few options. Not sure if there's anything.
Okay, let's hear some of them.
Okay. I think my personal favorite is Clueless and the Cleats.
Okay.
Kind of a take on Beauty and the Beast, but that has more to do with what we're doing.
Okay. What else do you have?
I have Wifey Wonders and Ask a Newbie.
Okay. Your sisters don't watch soccer, do they?
No.
Kind of shows. But anyway, let's see what the fans think, and we can go from there.
Sounds good. Open to suggestions.
Yes. Last week we learned about
The something player. The
designated
player.
Yes. And this week our topic is something called the Supporters Shield. What do you think the Supporters Shield is?
The Supporters Shield.
Yes.
I swear you're making these up. It sounds like something you would find in like Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
Supporters Shield. Does it have something like supporters as in fans?
Yes, that much is
okay.
Yeah. So the fans shield.
Like a physical shield?
There
like
is a physical shield,
the
yes.
thing that like the netting so you don't get no, that's in baseball.
Oh, are you thinking like a net
in the field?
A net that stops the ball from hitting fans?
Yeah.
No, but
No,
I can see how you got there, yeah. Supporters shield.
So like a metaphorical shield?
No, there's actually a big clunky shield, and the players sometimes lift it when they're very happy. It's a trophy. I
was going to say their shirts because they lift their shirts when they score goals sometimes.
They sometimes get yellow cards for doing that too, but that's a separate discussion. So the Supporters Shield is
a trophy.
It's a trophy. So let me try and give you the MLS explanation here. But so in the MLS, much like hockey and basketball and baseball, there's playoffs, and whoever wins the playoffs wins the MLS Cup, which is like the trophy that everyone really cares about, and that's like who qualifies for other tournaments and gets a bunch of prize money that they win the MLS Cup. But there's this other competition called the Supporters Shield. So you know how you qualify for the playoffs by playing like in a regular season? The Supporters Shield is the reward for the person who has the best record in the regular season. So that team would make the playoffs,
but they might not win it.
Exactly. So it's like a reward for consistency in the regular season before the real deal gets going, before the playoffs get moving.
Who names these?
Well, the idea is that it's a trophy dedicated to the supporters, so they call it the Supporters Shield. And the shield it looks like a shield, so they call it a shield rather than a cup.
Makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense.
I can show you a picture.
Picture
later.
would help.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go to the fans; it goes to a team.
You dedicate it to the fans, kind of a thing.
Yeah, but the fans don't get it.
No, as far as I'm aware, they
Yeah.
don't. Yeah. So supporters shields, thumbs up or thumbs down for the concept.
It's like team of the year title.
Yeah. The name, I'm guessing you give it a thumbs down.
Always.
Yeah.
So far.
Far we've had 2 topiks, and the name has been the tripping point. I'm starting to see a pattern here.
And all I have is the name to go on.
Yeah, that's what makes this feature fun.
Yeah, for you.
Yeah. Hopefully for the listeners too. Well, thanks very much, Caroline, and we will tune in next week to learn more about the wonderful world of Whitecaps and Major League Soccer.
Sounds good.
Someone fetch a priest. You can't say no to the beauty and the beast, darling.
It's going to be a good game, I think. It's always interesting when Vancouver play Toronto. And Gideon, let's have a look at what we think the Whitecaps will look like. Later on, we're going to hear from Marc Dos Santos on the topic, but what do you think? 4-4-2 again this week?
Yeah, and I think we saw a lot of times last year and years before, Joe, that, you win or lose a game and, the team has changed. And now I think, whether that be the injury, but now that I think that they're winning, they have the personnel available to play this formation, the 4-4-2, I think they stick with it. There wasn't any injuries from that I can recall from this weekend anyways that pertains to the starting 11. No, Godoy isn't ready, just started training fully this week, and same with the Wusu, the other 3 guys we mentioned earlier. So, if it don't fix it, I think that's what MDS is going to shoot for against a Toronto team. Again, don't know what to expect, but you don't want to certainly rotate if you don't have to. You played 4 or 5 days ago come Saturday, so lots of rest, and I think you probably won't see many changes in the lineup, if any.
Yeah, I definitely thinking along the same lines. You want to reward those players that gave it everything last week, and one way to do that is to give them another chance to do it. In probably a higher profile game, you have to say, within the Canadian market, right? I know the teams are all stateside, but viewership in Canada should be quite high for this game, given that it's I think it's Saturday at noon or something like that. It's a pretty good time for a match.
One thing I will add too, it also helps that you don't have the strongest options off the bench. I mean, Theo Bair,
yes,
Brian Raposo, Patrick Metcalf are probably those 3 that really jump off the pages to come into the game. So, like I said, if you don't have the options to replace, or you just won the game and you're happy with your, that's why I change it. So let's move on here.
Yeah. No, I think the only variable here that we don't know is whether or not the players that joined the camp recently will make the trip. Even today in the interviews that Marc Dos Santos gave, he wasn't quite committing to one way or the other. So I think if we do see any different players, it'll be in the last 10 minutes. We can't forget, the Florida heat at that time of day. It'll be 3:00 in the afternoon in Florida at that time. And Dos Santos was saying today that they were, trying to limit the amount of times the players got water today in practice to prepare for that. But really, I think he was of the opinion that there's not much you can do. You just have to go there and play and do the best you can. Is there anyone you would take out of the lineup out of concern from the team that played last weekend?
There's nobody that in particular that I think needs to come out. If there was other options like Wusu, Gaspar, Adnan, Alexandre, and Godoy, I think that's a different conversation. But in regards to for guys like you mentioned and guys like Baulismo, this experience and this opportunity to play this is invaluable for him. A guy that broke in last year, got a goal, but I think his performances may have dipped a little bit to end the year, and then especially with the Canada U23s not advancing, was disappointing. So I think he needs this confidence to play, and if there's nobody else or not any ideal opportunities for other players to come in for MDS, I think he earns that. So that might be the one variance, but other than that, I think it's a good squad to roll with against TFC on Saturday at 12.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're headed towards a very pleasant headache of who do we play in the team. The kind of thing you want is to have competition for places. So
you hate that, and at the same time you love it. Like it's that 2 months.
Yeah, because then you can get into situations where you drop a player if he plays badly, and you've got a player, a similar kind of player that can step in and play a similar role or something. But yeah, I think the Whitecaps have done a really good job supplementing the squad this year. We're just waiting for that number 10 that we keep hearing about.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, we all need a number 10 in our lives. Finally, just a kind of a tactical note, I guess, for the game. If you were Marc Dos Santos, what kind of weakness would you try and exploit in TFC from a tactical perspective, Gideon?
I think they're the midfield. I mean, on the right side, you have Michael Bradley, who's, the general, the tank, whatever you want to call him, if you're a TFC fan. But Ralph Priso, a younger midfielder, is definitely, he can look good. He's also had some moments where he's given up the ball. I noticed last year as well in the game against Nashville in the playoffs, where a couple of times he misplayed the ball, and it was, fell at the hands of Nashville, and it didn't end up in the right way for TFC. So him, as well as Nobel Caio, who started an attacking mid role last week. I guess through the middle is what I'm trying to get at here, Joe. Like, if you attack field, attacking midfielder and defensive midfielder for TFC, so just right down the middle of the pitch, I think you'll find some success if you're Vancouver, and the young center back Singh as well.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I was looking at the TFC lineup, and because, as I mentioned before, their back line is pretty much intact. Maybe Singh in the center back, but then you have Gonzalez to cover for him. So maybe that's not the weakest point, but yeah, the midfield is where the inexperience is, and that's the area that needs to be dominated, I think, to get quality scoring chances. And getting Baldissimo on the ball in transition is something too. I really liked how Dahomey and Caicedo stretched Portland last week with they were making a run before Baldissimo let the ball go. That kind of a dynamic. I think something similar could be very good here. Yeah, but then again, Gideon, what do we know? Let's hear from the man himself, Marc Dos Santos.
You're heading off to Orlando. It seemed really hot there last weekend. There was a lot of hydration breaks in the games that took place there. Obviously, you got a lot out of your players on Sunday. It's a shorter turnaround. There's the travel. But the way that Montreal played that game, on the front foot, pressing from the start, it seems certainly the kind of game that plays into how you play. What did you make of that Montreal TFC game? I know you don't want to give too much away of what you maybe learned of TFC's weaknesses, but it didn't look like a TFC team that you might get this week, because I think they probably learned a lot from that.
Michael, your question is fair, and I would love to answer with so many details, but just forgive me and understand me if I'm not gonna do that. I'll say this: I watched Toronto against Montreal, but I also watched Toronto against Leon. And not long ago, everybody was praising how they knocked out Leon and how the young players of Toronto did well. And we live in a sport that people forget really fast. You're good today, you're bad tomorrow, and it's a roller coaster. So I don't focus on the game Toronto-Montreal. I don't focus on the game Toronto-Leon. I watched all of them. But where we focused on is the strengths and weaknesses of Toronto, and our strengths as a team, and what we have to do as a team. And the game against Montreal could repeat itself, but or not. And the reality is that every game's different, every 90 minutes different. We're playing a team, again, like we did against Portland, a team that is in Champions League, a team that qualified for the quarterfinals of Champions League, a team that won the MLS Cup not long ago, a team that won the Canadian Championship. So, we did watch the game against Montreal, but we tried to look at more than one game to evaluate what a team does. When it comes to the hydration break and the humidity in Orlando, that's hard. That's hard. That's a fact. That's not easy to cope with. Of course, they have an advantage in that because they're always training over there and they understand that part. But again, slowly we're getting everybody. We have 5 substitutions. It's a game that we want to win. We want to come back here with with 6 points and play the next two home games in Salt Lake with the 6 points. We want to build on what we've done against Portland, but we know how hard it is, and we know when a team has a tough day, they address things, and I'm sure it's not going to be the same team.
Do you see anything different in the Toronto FC press under Amos than other teams that you've played?
Neil, I see a lot of Red Bull, a lot. I see a lot of Red Bull. I see a lot of the ideas that Chris learned at Red Bull, and he's trying to implement it in Toronto. He's working on it in Toronto, and it's very clear what he wants to do there. So there's no doubt in my head what type of team we're going to face.
I guess Michael and Neil sort of asked you about it a bit, but just kind of to follow up about the TFC press. Obviously, you got to play them at 3 o'clock local time in the Orlando humidity. It's not ideal. So how do you prepare for those kinds of the intensity their press offers in such conditions?
Yeah, look, you can't recreate the humidity here in Salt Lake. That's a reality. You can't build a soccer field inside a sauna. The reality is that you train in Salt Lake and the weather is different. But what we do is we try to limit the times that they drink water today during the training sessions. So we limit that a lot. And those are the little things we could do, but it's really hard to recreate the type of atmosphere or humidity that we're going to find at 3 o'clock. The good news is that 3 o'clock over there is 1 o'clock here in Salt Lake. So we're still alert. We're still fresh, still ready to go. I think the 5 subs are going to matter. I think the 5 subs in this game are going to be important, and we have to be ready to use it because the type of weather, when Montreal played the Toronto, they're both in Florida. They're both used to the same type of weather. Now we're not, and we're going to have to make sure that we're smart dealing with the different phases of the game.
He's the gaffer. You can't try it on with him. He's the gaffer. Even when he's on a limb. He's the gaffer. When his back's against the wall, has the answer to it all. He's the gaffer.
Head coach Mark Dos Santos there, although his job title might be a bit different because I can't keep track of what coaches call themselves nowadays. First team coach Mark Dos Santos.
Manager.
Yeah, Gideon, it wouldn't be a preview pod without a game. So let's have our game. We're going to carry over our over-under game from last week. It was quite fun, but we're going to change it up a little bit. Instead of going back and forth, we'll do 3 and 3, kind of separately rather than tennis or ping-ponging it back and forth. So how about I'll give you my 3 over-unders first, and let's see how you do.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so we're going to go off last year's stats for TFC. I'm going to start with Akinola. Over under 30 shots last year.
I'm going to say over.
Yeah, 36. So one out of 1 so far. Okay, Jonathan Osorio. 20 games played.
Under.
Correct again. Yeah, you're killing it so far. All right. Michael Bradley, shots on goal. Sorry, I lost my spot on the page. Michael Bradley, shots on goal, 5.
I feel like he doesn't shoot enough. I'm going to go under.
Yeah, 3 for 3. Congrats. I need to be perfect.
I did not do research. I promise I did not do research on those.
You're just generally knowledgeable. That's the thing. All right, give me my 3.
I was going to say quickly too, like last year, Osorio, the reason I said under, because nobody played like more than 20 games last year. If you did, like you're an exceptional athlete, like with the conditions and all that.
Yeah,
okay.
there was a couple of 20, but most, I think he had 17 in the end.
Okay. Over or under, Josie Altidore had 10 goals.
Over? Oh no, wait. Sorry, under, because I know in research for the show, their top scorer had 9. So yeah, under.
Yes, correct. Okay. TFC, over under, TFC had 5 shutouts as a team last year.
Ooh, under.
They had, I believe it was 7.
Oh no. Okay. Well, I've already mathematically lost, but I deserve my credit.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, over under, TFC had 2 team red cards last season.
Under. I'll go 1.
Yeah, they had 0 actually.
Oh, cool. Wait, Michael Bradley?
Which is, I looked. I swear I checked.
I guess Jermaine Defoe doesn't play for them anymore.
No, I know. Or Gilberto. We could have had some throwing hands over a free kick situation again.
Yeah. I mean, MLS is a great venue for silly red cards. Gideon, before we wrap up for the week, what do you think the scoreline will be in this Vancouver TFC game?
I'm going to run with 2-1 Caps. I think it'll be a close game, and I think it'll be I think Toronto will grab the early game. The Whitecaps will claw back, and TFC will tire because they're playing all these games in the Champions League.
Yeah, could be. I'm going to go 1-1, same as I went last week. I was only off by a goal in the end. But
Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I think that's
yes, very good. Gideon, where can people find you online?
@ Gideon Hill on Twitter.
Okay, and you can find me at Joe DC Van. Thanks very much for listening to episode 445 of the AFTN podcast. Enjoy the game.
When you're listening in some far-flung corner of the globe to the World Service of a Saturday afternoon, crackly reception, interference, cosy, marvellous. Somehow comforting, isn't it? You know, legendary names, fathers and sons, on the terraces, cheesy peas at half-time, pint for dad, mum's at home making the tea. Oh, everything's all right with the world, isn't it? Saturday afternoon is football.